Today, we're diving into a topic that's often misunderstood and is vital that we clarify for the AI enabled workplace. What exactly is Agile? Many believe it's just a set of methodologies. This couldn't be furthest from the truth. In reality, Agile is a mindset, a cultural approach that emphasizes customer focus, adaptability, collaboration, and continuous improvement, all of which increase resilience. As AI reshapes our work environment, understanding Agile in its true form is as crucial to safely and successfully navigate the challenges ahead. So let's explore what Agile is, what it isn't, and why its values are more important now than ever before in the rapidly changing workplace of today. Hello, and welcome to Agile for AI. I'm Sean, and I'm really happy to see you here today. Thank you for spending your time deciding to be here. And I hope that you were able to take something away from today that will help you. It will help you in your life and in your work life, just as I experienced it. Agile has made incredible improvements in my life. And I want to share those with you. And I also want to hear your thoughts. What are your impressions? What kind of thoughts does this kind of conversation stir? What do you worry about when you think about the future? What are you looking forward to? Let me know. I'm looking forward to reading the comments. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right into the topic of what Agile is and how does it relate to chaos and calm. Been talking about the origins of waterfall. Where did that come from? Where did the ways that we manage work come from? How did they emerge? And I've highlighted that there were initially very physically demanding work conditions. These were in agriculture, primarily agriculture and forced labor, that created this overpowering manager persona. Following that, Taylorism and Lean created a minimalistic approach to maximize throughput by removing wasteful and costly work activities for the sake of optimizing efficiency and increasing profits, reducing costs as well. Next, we talked about how Winston Royce in 1970 wrote a paper. His intent was to highlight, based on his experience, the limitations and the challenges that waterfall created. He was involved in very large development projects, and he was seeing how there were risks to continuing with this approach. Unfortunately, his presentation was interpreted by those who saw it, the leadership who saw it, as an endorsement and a way to formalize the practices all the time. That's how waterfall emerged. I've mentioned before, and I want to be clear, it's not to say that waterfall is flawed or faulty. It is just simply a different tool that addresses different challenges, different needs from what Agile does. And unfortunately, there was a missed opportunity with that paper to start incorporating earlier some of the thinking that Agile has now brought about. Royce was advocating for small iterative development cycles as a safer way and more predictive way to move forward with development. Now we find ourselves in facing the fourth industrial revolution, which is already underway, with AI and robotics automation excelling at simple repetitive work within limited variability of range. It doesn't mean that they can't deal with variability, but it's limited, especially by comparison to what humans can manage. And any jobs that align with that footprint are ripe for replacement. That's important to keep in mind. AI in the areas where it excels and robotics where they excel will be able to do it far better than human beings can, just by sheer volume and speed. However, AI and robotics cannot, at least not yet. I watch this space very carefully on a daily basis, and I know that it's changing at an incredibly fast pace. So who knows what tomorrow is going to bring? But at least for now, AI and robotics cannot compete with human experience, intuition, and adaptability to tackle the very complex, unknown, variable, and certain work. How do we do that? How can human beings continue on that path and be able to focus on that complex space? And the answer is that we need to upskill the workforce. Workforce needs to maintain their relevance, which will maintain the relevance of humans in the workplace to deliver the higher value work that businesses need more and more. This is what human beings can contribute. This is what human beings are best at. We need to move away from the more limited way of working that has been prevailing up until now. So the good news is that Agile is the ingredient that enables humans to reach that higher level of performance in the workplace by nurturing and developing high performing interpersonal skills that are necessary to create the environment that's appropriate and fertile for high creativity, innovation, engagement. These things are what lead to that kind of success. Today, what I want to focus on, what I'll talk about is there's a lot of misconception, misunderstanding about Agile. And let's sort of talk about what it is and what it isn't so we can get a clearer view and understanding of how Agile can help. When talking about Agile, the first thing to talk about is language and how language presents a real challenge. Language is a problem. What do I mean by that? In Agile contexts, communication is central. It's key. Clear, efficient, effective communications are really critical to avoid misunderstanding, to avoid spending time doing things that are unintended, undesired, potentially lead us down a path that's exactly opposite to what's needed. If we don't have a clear understanding, we're going to end up in the wrong place. Unfortunately, we rely on language to convey concepts and requirements and what we want, what we need. However, those words, that language, lack intrinsic meaning. Without setting proper context, the words themselves are not enough. We need to have context to understand what they mean. So, for example, if I were to say, I saw her duck, what does that mean? What did I just convey? Well, if the person that I saw happens to have a duck, an animal, then that's what I meant. They have, I saw a duck. But what if what I saw was them dodging an object that was heading towards them? In that case, duck refers to their action of avoiding that object. So what if it wasn't an object? What if it was more non-physical? It was a conversation, a heated conversation, a heated meeting, a difficult situation where they ducked, they avoided whatever was coming, a difficult question, and making a statement. It depends. Context is key. And Agile cares very much about context, establishing proper context, clarifying the context. So in Agile culture, communications are often needed we need to repeat them over and over again and looking at things in conversations from different perspectives, different angles, precisely to create that clear understanding, that shared knowledge and understanding of the concepts that need to be conveyed. When we cut corners, when we try for the sake of expediency and efficiency, like Waterfall has conditioned us to do, and we increase the risk of having a miscommunication. That's why Agile reinforces having constant touch points, check-ins, so that we can have the opportunity to clarify and avoid those miscommunications. The goal ultimately from all this talking is to create a shared pool of knowledge and understanding to avoid wasteful efforts that take us down the wrong direction. That's what all of this talking is all about. When people complain that in Agile there's just too many minutes, too many talking, um, What we want to emphasize is that all of those meetings and all the talking, they are work in themselves. They're the work of ensuring that we end up in the right place. And that can only come from clearly understanding where we're heading. Now, I said that to talk about Agile, the first thing that we need to acknowledge is that we have a language problem. And that language problem comes from the words themselves and how, without context, it's difficult to understand what people mean. And unfortunately, when we put certain words together that don't make a lot of sense, we create a lot of confusion. And from my perspective, Agile has fallen to that pitfall. One of the terms that you've probably heard, it's very commonly used, a lot of the books that have been written of it all over the place, is Agile methodologies. And that term, Agile methodologies, makes my heart hurt. It's a contradiction of terms. On the one hand, you have agile meaning flexibility, adaptability, highly situational decision making. This is very fluid. And on the other hand, you have methodology. Methodologies are recipes, they're prescriptions. So you follow these steps, you get this result. These two things are fundamentally opposite. Does that mean that the term doesn't make any sense and there isn't a context under which it makes sense? No, there is a very specific context under which it does make sense. However, if we use it as a synonym for agile, which is what's happened, people equate agile to agile methodologies. We've created a lot of confusion because these two things refer to different, these two terms refer to different things. On the one hand, I've mentioned how agile is it's all about flexibility and adaptability and all of that. And on the other hand, methodology refers to processes and tools. And it's very ironic that we talk so much about processes and tools when the Agile Manifesto, the first value of the Agile Manifesto, is people and interactions over processes and tools. It doesn't mean that processes and tools are not important. In fact, if we don't have the right processes and tools that lead to agility, it's not possible to deliver agility in the business. So, yes, of course, processes and tools are very important. They're critically important. To use the right ones for the right purpose, get that agility that we're looking for. And that's not agile. Agile is something else that enables those tools to perform at their best. How did we get here? How did we come about? Where did the agile methodologies come from? Remember that the Agile Manifesto was authored by 17 industry experts who had developed their processes and methodologies aligned with agility to deliver agility. All of those were done before Agile. They came before Agile. It was the authors of those processes and tools that the methodologies that came together to define Agile. That wasn't their purpose, but that was what happened. Historically, a quicker example to give you is, for example, Scrum. Most people have heard about Scrum. Scrum was formally defined in the early 1990s, between 1990 and 1995. Agile was defined in 2001. And in fact, if if you ever meet John Sutherland and Ken Shriver are the co-authors of Scrum. If you ever run into Jeff Sutherland, you want to get a bit of a reaction from him, just ask him what came first, Scrum or Agile. And yeah, he'll give you a response that he's given many, many, many times. Please don't do that. Yes, Scrum came before Agile. And this is important to really internalize because Scrum, XP, test-driven development, many of these methodologies are really important. They all came before Agile. What is Agile? It's something else. I remember once I was doing a lot of thinking as in my journey and learning all this agile stuff. I was doing a lot of thinking. I was considering about agile practices, and I had a really hard time figuring out what an agile practice was. The term didn't make sense to me, just like agile methodologies didn't make sense. Agile practices didn't make sense for another reason, especially when I put it in the context of agile best practices, which everybody asks. So now, as a coach, go into an assignment and I'm asked about the agile best practices. What are the best practices in agile? I understand the question and where it comes from. Waterfall expects for there to be best practices because it's conditioned to look for standardization. It doesn't mean that a standardization is bad. On the contrary, please standardize wherever you can. But agile is not about standardization. And to say agile best practices makes no sense, just as agile methodologies doesn't make sense as a term. Best practices, going back to language and how important it is and how imprecise it is, best practices with words have a psychological effect. When we say best practices, it creates what in agile culture we refer to as an agile antipathy. That's something that impedes, limits, prevents agility. Why does best practices impede agility? Because when we talk about best practices and we consider what we're doing, why would we try to do better than best practices? I'm already doing the best. What do you expect from me? So how much more do you want from me? I'm already doing the best. That's what happens when people hear best practices. It's a limitant to thinking. Best practices are introduce people stop thinking. And Agile is all about thinking. Agile always considers that however well things are going, however well we're doing, we can always do it just a little bit better. So once again, this is another example where Agile has encountered language challenges with language that has created confusion about what Agile is. So Agile is not a set of prescriptive practices. Following a set of rules is not the way to be Agile. In fact, following a set of rules, we talk about doing Agile as opposed to being Agile, which is just also called Agile theater. It's pretending to be Agile, but it's not Agile. Another thing that Agile is not is just limited to software development. Yes, software development is what popularized it, is what made us all aware of it. However, Agile can be applied to any industry and any walk of life. You can introduce Agile concepts at home. I've used it in social context. For example, counseling teens, couple teens going through a lot of very difficult situations. Agile has helped them understand and better deal with highly complex situations that are otherwise very frustrating to them, very difficult to manage. So, alluding to the image that I chose for today's talk, there is a calmness that Agile brings to the chaos that we are in the middle of. Come back to that. So, there's a lot of wonderful things that Agile can do and deliver. And it's also not a magic pill. It is not a magic solution for all problems. I think it's really important to be very honest about and upfront about this. I think there's been a lot of oversell of Agile, pretending that it can just take care of all company problems. It can't. It has a very specific purpose. It's very good at it. And just as it's good to have waterfall for what it's good at, it's good to have Agile for what it's good at. I've mentioned before the analogy of thinking of waterfall as the hammer and agile as the screwdriver. Have the hammer and the screwdriver. Mm. And the screwdriver can't fix everything, just as a hammer can't fix everything. There are other tools. So it's just about learning the tools and how to use them. Another misconception is that Agile is a replacement for management or planning. This is very unfortunate, and I've lived through it. I know how people land at that feeling, and that's not at all the intent. I remember a former boss of mine had a really good working relationship and good friends. And he had already been talking, he spent some time telling us all about management through influence. And as a director, I found the concept at the time really challenging. Managing by authority seemed a lot simpler, a lot more efficient, a lot more effective sometimes. Um, because management by influence was kind of like seemed seemed to be a lot of work. So at one point, by trying this agile thing, I just had the conversation with him and I asked him directly, "Is this your polite way to ask me to quit? Is that what's really going on? Is that what you're doing?" And he laughed and he said, "No, no, 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 no. Just try it out. Give it a try and see what happens." And I'm glad that I did because indeed he was right. There's a lot of wonderful things that come from it. It's not about replacing management. It's about improving management. It's about removing the things that management keeps from this early persona, this overpowering early persona that was needed in very harsh working conditions that are no longer necessary in the workplace and, in fact, are counterproductive because can't we can't force, we can't mandate, we can't command people into being creative and being innovative and solving complex problems. That doesn't work. We may be able to forcefully get somebody to move a rock from one place to another, but we can't get people to be creative just by telling them to do so. So those aspects, those task manager aspects of management are what we need to shed in favor of the things that are going to allow teams and individuals to self organize and self manage in ways that will allow them to perform at their best. I also mentioned that it's also often misunderstood that Agile is about replacing planning. That's not true at all. In fact, Agile does tremendous amount of planning. This does it in a different way. Doesn't do it in the Microsoft project pre-planned, have the formalized and signed plan and then go execute. No, doesn't do it that way. And it does constant planning and replanning and readjusting. It's just a different way that aligns with the type of work and the type of working conditions where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknowns. We need to react to very quickly. The moment that we become aware, we shift, we adjust the plan accordingly to align to whatever we just learned about. So that leads us to wondering then what is agile? I'm going to offer to you three definitions. The first two you've probably come across. The third, most certainly you haven't, and is the most relevant to this channel. So the first definition that you've probably heard is that Agile is a way of working that uses specific framework and methods like Scrum and Kanban to help teams and companies deliver quality products to customers more quickly. This is all about processes and tools. That is not Agile at all. And unfortunately, that is the prevailing view and misunderstanding of Agile. It is limiting. It only focuses on a very narrow aspect of Agile, the methodology specifically, and it won't deliver everything that Agile is capable of doing. Second definition, um, Goes something like this. Think about Agile being a way of thinking that encourages everyone in a company to focus on the customer, to communicate better, and to make quick decisions that deliver value to customers faster while carefully managing risks. When we think about that definition, I think that it aligns a little bit better with the Agile Manifesto as it's written. It emphasizes the human elements and the customer, and it's a more comprehensive definition that acknowledges that it's a way of thinking. There's that element in there. So the cultural aspects of Agile are included in that definition. Like I said, unfortunately, the first definition is the prevailing, and it's an inaccurate one. This one's at least a better definition. And when I look at the future, this is where I'm putting the pieces together. I think there's a third definition that I've shared with some people that I highly respect in the industry. And we all align that this is the way forward. Agile is evolving. Agile needs to change. If it's agile, then it should be able to do it. So there's nothing that says that agile is just the thing that we've known, the thing that we know about. So this more comprehensive and evolving definition talks about agile being a mindset that empowers workers to move away from simple routine tasks, which AI and robots and automation can handle more efficiently, and to develop skills in managing complex and unpredictable situations, all while carefully managing risks. I mentioned in the previous definition, and I emphasize it in this one as well, that it includes managing risk. Um, yes, there's a lot of chaos that Agile deals with. That's what it's good at. All the unknowns, the uncertainty. That feels very chaotic. Even if it's not chaotic, that feels very chaotic. Um, and it does so in a way that manages the risk, that limits risk, which is very important. Businesses need to have that in order to be able to deliver, in order to be able to predict its future, or at least ensure that things are set up in the best way possible for success. Agile does that. It's deeply ingrained into Agile and the Agile mindset and the Agile approaches. So Agile is a cultural approach. It focuses on resilience, adaptability, collaboration, and continuous improvement. These are the elements that are needed in order to manage complex and unpredictable environments. It's a response to increasing complexity in the workplace and complexity in the work that we do. And I want to draw a distinction between complexity and difficulty. These two terms are different, they refer to different things. Something can be very simple and very hard to do. And conversely, something can be very complex and very easy to do. So, for example, moving a multi-ton boulder, it's nothing particularly complex about that. It's just moving a big rock. It's really hard to do, of course. It's just moving a rock. There's not much beyond that. Again, it's hard. It's not complex. Keeping our spouse happy all the time. Now, that can sometimes be hard, yeah. And oftentimes it can be very, very, very simple. It's really complex, really easy to do, sorry. But it's can be sometimes really, really, really complex figuring out how to do it. There's simple, complex, easy, hard. Looking at things from this perspective, we can come up with a classification of work. And there's a framework to do that. There's a formal framework to do that. It's called the Kinevin framework. We'll talk about that in the future, but in summary, it classifies work in a way that I've already alluded to. We have simple type work, and I suggest that in general, waterfall is pretty good at it. And there's complex type of work. And in general, Agile is pretty good at that. So as a culture, it helps us use that screwdriver. It creates the right mindset to use the screwdriver that I keep talking about. How does it do that? By highlighting the importance of keeping the customer in focus, by doing iterative progress as opposed to these big, massive deliverables. Embracing change. There's no problem with things changing all of a sudden and constantly. Not a big deal. We just adapt to those changes. Without Agile, all of that can be very overwhelming and frustrating. Again, just talk to a project manager. I've been a project manager. I know how frustrating it is when people introduce changes. And now I have to go realign Microsoft project to reflect that. Yes, that is chaotic. Agile creates an environment where we can have all of those changes and all of that discovery and remain calm. We can keep a calm mind through it. That makes work a lot more enjoyable. It makes it fun, literally. I've had a lot of fun at work since I've gone into the Agile way of doing things. So Agile can really help us. And it can be a really good ally as we introduce AI to the workplace. It removes the threat of the human displacement in the workplace by acknowledging, valuing, and positioning humans to deliver what we're best at. Some roles will inevitably be displaced, and many others will be redefined, and others will be enhanced. But I think it's really important just to recognize that we are at a moment in history where we can make the choice of which ones and how we develop them. Our own job. We find ourselves in a job that's just very monotonous, very repetitive, very predictable. I would caution that this is a signal. It's probably easy to replace that. So, how do we upskill in order to avoid being impacted by the changes that are coming? The agile mindset can definitely help us get there. We keep the human element central and we develop what we're best at. And we incorporate AI as teammates that can take off the burden of those repetitive things, can solve the simple work much more efficiently, quicker, and in a better repeatable way than humans can. And it frees us up to be able to focus on that complex or type of work that we're good at. We can bring our high adaptability and continuous learning to help us keep moving forward in this journey. And AI can help us get there. I'm confident about that. I've experienced it, I've seen it. It can be extremely powerful and really rewarding. So, really important to keep in mind some of the points that we've gone over. That Agile is not the set of rigid methodologies or a magic pill solution to all problems. It's not limited to software development or can be a replacement for good management. We need good management. We need better management. It's going to help us become better people, better workers. Agile is a mindset and a cultural approach that emphasizes resilience, adaptability, collaboration, and continuous improvement. It's a way of thinking that empowers us to navigate complex and unpredictable environments effectively. So as we move forward, I think it's really important to remember the importance of true agile culture that will help us in the AI era. Agile principles enable us to maintain that human element in an increasingly automated workplaces. By focusing on complex problem solving, creativity, and adaptability, Agile helps us stay relevant and valuable in a world where AI handles routine tasks. And it's not about just improving workflows. That we have methods to do that. Let's move beyond that. So it's about evolving our capabilities to thrive alongside AI, ensuring that we contribute our uniquely human skills to tackle the challenges of tomorrow. So I'd like to encourage you to think about, to ponder about these thoughts, the clarifications about what Agile is and it isn't, and how it can help you in your future. I really look forward to hearing about that. So I'd appreciate if you put a comment and reach out anytime. And until then, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks for joining me.